How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to this Mantine tutorial. In this video, we're going to be recreating Llama Life. If you've never seen Llama Life before, here's a sneak preview. This is what it looks like. And we're going to create a fairly similar product that looks like this. Except from we've called it Alpaca Activity. So if you're ready to learn how to use Mantine's UI components alongside regular styling and divs, join in as we start coding along and build a cool project. To begin this tutorial, we need to talk about what we're going to be using with Mantine today. So click Get Started here and let's talk about what we're going to be used. We're going to be focusing only on Mantine core today, but if you want to see other things like the forms, hooks, notification modals, rich text editor, etc., please let me know in the comments below and we'll do more videos on Mantine. So we're going to be focusing on quite a few of the core elements of Mantine today. We're going to be thinking about the AppShell, which gives you a responsive shell for your applications. It allows you to build out a frame that you can use on every single page and know that it's going to work whether it's on an iPad, on your desktop, or on your mobile phone. We're also going to be working with Group today, which is essentially just Flex in a container that we're going to be using throughout this. We're also going to be using something called an action icon, which allows you to essentially create a button from an icon or from some sort of text. And it looks similar to this. Let's just blow this up to a big size. And you can do all sorts of things, like you can make it transparent, or you can make it light, or you can make it filled. And depending on what you select on the sides, depends on how it looks. On top of that, we're also going to be using something in the button section called an UnstyledButton. This UnstyledButton allows you to create completely custom buttons where the inside does not have to be button based. It could be a group of items, it could be text, it could be pictures, it could be whatever you want with zero styling, and you can just group everything inside of this UnstyledButton and it will work just like a button should. So those are the main elements. Obviously, we're going to use things like headings and text and things like that, and we'll talk about those as we start going into our project, but that's the main idea of how we're going to be using it. So to begin with, if you click Mantine and get started and select Next.js, and if you just click these are the default packages, you'll come down and you'll see that you can use these out of the gate. So just go ahead, copy the yarn ad, and all you need is hooks, core, and Next.js, and we'll put this in our tutorial. So here we are in a Next.js application. We've just used create next app at latest and called this the Mantine tutorial. First, we want to add in our yarn ad. So we'll do yarn add Mantine hooks, Mantine core, and Mantine next. Once that's installed, we can talk about how we're going to tackle this project. The way we're going to tackle this project is in two sections. First, the first section will be the AppShell, which will contain what exactly we're looking for. The second part will be the rest of the application. Now, the AppShell is going to be component-based, while the rest will just be in our index page. Now, to talk about what we're going to be doing, we really need to look at Llama Life one more time. So here is Llama Life and what it looks like. Basically, we're going to recreate this whole page here minus this section here. Once we click clear all and click clear all, this is exactly what we're going to recreate. We're going to have a Llama Life icon at the top. At the bottom, we're going to have this list time. At the right-hand side, end time, and then everything in the middle. Now, bearing in mind, these all buttons will work in the real application, but in our demo, none of these buttons are going to work. By the end of this, it will look the same, it will feel the same, except from nothing will actually be functional. So the first part we need to work out is how do we build out this app shell? Now, this is what it looks like on desktop, and this is what it looks like on mobile. If we shrink this down, it looks exactly the same. You can see nothing has actually changed. There's no hamburger menus, anything like that, which makes it slightly easier. So let's start by creating our app shell. So the first thing I'm going to do is just boot up the server so that it's running, and then we'll get rid of that. And then we'll start by creating a new folder here called components. Now inside of this components is where we're going to be storing our app shell. So we're going to call this application container.js. Now, this application container.js is going to hold the AppShell and pass in the children that we can use anywhere in our application, and we're actually going to use that in our app.js. But before we go any further with any more code for our application container, we need to actually set Mantine up. Inside your pages folder, we need to create an underscore document.js, and this is going to hold all of our initial props that need to be loaded from Mantine. So inside of our document.js, this is where we're going to start creating some code. The first thing we need to do is import document, and that's going to come from Next.document. And we'll also need to import one more thing from our Mantine next, which is going to be called create get initial props. And that's going to come right from Mantine/next. Now we have that, we can actually start creating our code here that's going to load in any of the initial props that we might need. So we can do get initial props equals, and then we're going to use this, and that will load in our Mantine props. And then all we need to do is just send out our default class for underscore document. So we can call this export default class underscore document. Extends document, and then inside of here we can just do static get initial props equals get initial props, and that's it. This part is now set up in our code, and now we can work on our app.js. Inside of our app.js, we're essentially going to wrap our component here in Mantine and allow us to essentially set some global styles, normalize our CSS, and even set the theme as we like. So to do this, you need to import the Mantine provider. So it's import Mantine provider, and that's going to come from @Mantine/core. Now we have the Mantine provider, we can actually change this whole return statement. So inside our return statement, we're going to do Mantine provider, and then under that, we can do with global styles, with normalize CSS, and then theme is equal to, and we'll just do color scheme is light. Now, we're just going to set this to light, and there is going to be a part of the video where I show you how you can access theme colors in a specific way. But you could change this to system and have anyone in the system access that data. Now we have that. We can close this out, and then inside of here, we can just return components, and then ... page props. And now we have our fully functioning, ready to go application. We're now ready to start building out this application container. So our application container here is going to be essentially all of the UI that you saw for Llama Life. It's going to have that top section and the bottom section, and then the children inside. The powerful thing about this application shell that we're using here is that you can have both a header, footer, sidebar, and application nav sidebar all in one place. So you can essentially fill both sides of the screen on the left and the right, and the top and the bottom. For this, we're only going to use the top and the bottom, but I'll link the documentation where you can find out more about adding other features. So to begin with, we need to import everything we need. So import AppShell. We need to import footer, group, header, and text. And that's going to come from the Mantine core. So @Mantine/core. We can say export const application container equals, and then we're going to pass in the children, and we're going to use that to power our application. Then in our return statement here, we're going to do AppShell, and we're going to use this AppShell to power the application. Now, AppShell takes in a few different things, and it's probably different than some things you've seen before. So instead of doing the AppShell like this, and then inside the AppShell doing your header and your footer, and then your children, with this, we're actually going to pass in the header and footer as props. And then we're just going to pass in the children. So here we can just do children and hit save. And this is actually ready to be used. So we could import this right out of the gate and then use it during our application. So let's do that so we can do some side-by-side work. So this application container can actually be imported here. So we can do import application container from, and then / components / application container. Then we can take this application container that's here and then pass in everything inside our Mantine provider. Once we do this, we'll be able to essentially use this wherever we want on every single page. Obviously, if you didn't want this on every page, you could just use it on individual pages, and the same applies. This gets wrapped around everything that's in your children. Now we've got this, we should launch our server by doing yarn dev, and then I'll launch and I'll meet you back once we get to the page. So there we have our application. Right now, nothing looks very different, but we're going to start working on the actual shell so that we can start seeing some different changes as we build it. The whole application is going to be built in this side-by-side mode so that we can see as we start progressing. So the first thing we need to do is add some styles here. We're going to be adding styles for the main, and the main section is obviously anything inside of this children's section here. So inside of that, we're going to have a background. That background is going to be in white. We're going to have a width of 100 of the view width. We're going to have a height of 100 of the view height. We're also going to set padding on the left equal to 0 pixels. When we hit save here, nothing will really change. You see there was a slight shift in the content, but apart from that, nothing has changed on the screen. So now we need to work outside these styles and start working on other pieces. So first we're going to set the boolean of fixed, which allows us to essentially have this on every page. It will be fixed and it will not matter how you do it from a static layout or not. Next, we need to tell it that we want a footer. Now the way that this is going to work is you're going to pass in equals and then this, and then we can pass in an actual component which is called footer. So we can use footer here and denote the height of what we want the footer to be. So I'm going to set it to 60 and we're going to use padding equal to medium. And inside of here is where we're going to do the footer work. But when I hit save here, you can see a little line has appeared on the screen. This means that we now have a footer. So now we can start making things work. So we're going to use group here, which is flex. And we're going to say position equals apart. And that means it will stretch across the screen. And we're going to have spacing of extra large. One thing to note before we move on, spacing or padding or margins or anything like that is a set number based upon a word. So small, medium, large, extra large. You can obviously write 3M and it will do 3rem or 30 pixels or whatever, and it will still work the same way, but they do have some default ones in the theme and it will probably get much further if you use those. So now we have spacing of extra large, we can actually start writing things in here. So we're going to have text here, which is size of small. We're also going to then put a span inside of that. This span is going to contain font weight of bolder, which I want to show you now. So what's cool about Mantine is you can use both Mantine components and regular divs and regular styling on top. So this is a regular span that we can then do a style. And then inside of that style, we can then state that we want font weight. And that font weight is going to be bolder. I'm going to hit save here. And then I'm going to wrap this in a word wrap so that we can keep it on the page. And now we can start working on our span here. So inside of this span, we're going to have list time. And then outside of the span, we're just going to have 0 hours and 25 minutes. And now you can see this list time is here, which kind of matches what we have here. If we close this out and put it here, list time, 0 hours, 0 minutes right now. But if you had a task, it would be that number. So now we can copy this and we can drop it down and hit save. And now we have one over here. We can change it from list time to end time. and we'll just set it to 7:51 p.m. I don't know why it's 7:51 p.m., but I think that's when I was writing the original tutorial. Now we have all of this, we're ready to start working on some other things, such as adding the emojis that are here, and then we'll be done with the footer. So let's add the emojis real quick. I'll just copy and paste them off the internet and drop them in. Obviously, you can pick other emojis if you so wish. So we'll put a space here, put this, and put list. And then we can just repeat the same for the end time, and it's just a ta-da emoji. Is that what it's called? Or confetti emoji, and hit save. So now we have this section done. The footer is complete. And you can see how easy it is to sort of create your own footer however you want and have it always show up on your AppShell. Next, we just need to pass in our header. So for this, we do header equals, and we do the same kind of thing. We just pass in the header element and we tell it what we want to do. So with this one, I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of just using Mantine's group, I'm going to show you can also use just divs and you can style it however you want. So unlike other component libraries out there, which kind of forces you into this space where you have to use either their tokens or an SX or something to make your own styles, you can just use divs as you so wish. So we're going to set the height here of 70, and we're going to add medium padding similar to our footer here, just slightly bigger. And then we can do div style equals display, and we'll do flex, which is the same thing as this group. And then we'll do align items center. And then we'll set the height equal to 100%. So 100%. And then inside of our div, we'll just have some text. So we'll just do text. And we'll make sure we put a comma here. And we'll do text. Size is going to be large. And we'll set the weight equal to boldest. And then we'll call it alpaca activity. And then we'll see what mistake we made here. We need to change this to a colon, hit save, and make this into a string. And there we have it, alpaca activity. Let's change this to bolder. There we go. So now we have that. We could change this size to extra large if we so wish to give it a little bit more of a kick. But as you can see, it's coming along. We could change the size of the text even more, but I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. And now we need to focus on this section. So before we move on, let's actually talk about this section and how it works in Llama Life and how we want to position this and how we're going to make this all work. So in a minute, we're going to install another package called Tabular Icons React, which is a completely open source icon library that gives you high quality SVGs. And I really like it. And I've been using it more and more frequently. And yeah, so we're going to be using that to do all the icon work. So that will be for this button here. All of those icons are going to be handled through this Tabular Icons. Now, to talk about how this is going to work, we're going to make sections here in the application. So the first section is going to be right here where the cogwheel is and the application menu. The second section is going to be this section right here, which is the time and the task. The third section will be these plus and minus plus the play button. And the final section will be this section here. We're going to be using a mix of a few different things here. We're going to have action icons. We're going to have buttons that have been unstyled. We're going to be using group a lot. And obviously we're going to be using these buttons. And I'm going to show you how that all works. So let's move on and go into our index page. We're inside of our index page and we can immediately remove everything inside of this return. We don't need any of this and we won't be using any of it in this example. We can also delete everything at the top there. We then need to import our Mantine stuff first. So we're going to do action icon, box, group, text, title, unstyled button, and use Mantine theme. And that's going to all come from at Mantine core. We're going to hit save And then I will word wrap this so we don't have to worry about it. And we can see everything on the screen. So now we have that, we should open up our terminal and install our tabular package. So for this, it's just going to be yarn add tabular icons react, and that will give us what we need to be able to finish this project out. So go ahead and install that, and we'll be ready to use them now. So now that's been installed, all we need to do is import the icons that I'm going to use for this. So we're going to have a player play. We're going to have a settings, a playlist, add, and finally a plus button here. And those are all going to come from tabular icon react. So now we have all of that. We're ready to start creating our project. So the first thing we want to do is actually hook into the theme in case we want to use that. And to do that, inside of here, you can do const theme equals use Mantine theme. And that will give us access to the theme and anything inside of it. So that means all of the default styles that we could have, we can access using this. And we can change things depending on if it's light or dark mode. But I'm going to show you one way to access colors that you might want to use based upon the theme. So inside of our return statement here, we're going to create a group at the top. This group is going to hold everything in this column section. So let's flip back to our application. It's going to complain because this return statement is currently empty, but we'll fix that right now. So we're going to set a column of direction and a margin at the top of -20 pixels so that it sits snug up against the top header. Then inside of this group, we're going to have one more group, and this group is going to hold the styles, which includes the background color. So the way we're going to access a background color here is we're going to use the theme that we've accessed here and ask it for a particular color. So you can do that by doing background color. And then inside of here, you can do theme colors.gray and then tell it what number you want. So I'm just going to ask for 0. Then we're going to do width of 500 pixels. And finally, a height of 100 of the viewport. So 100 of the view height. And then outside of our custom theme here, we're going to say MX equals auto. And then direction equals column. And that should be everything we need. So if I hit save now, and then we reload the server. So as you can see now, we have this light gray background that's holding in the middle of the screen. And inside of here is where we're going to be doing all of the work. Now, before I continue on, I want to point out I'm going to be using pixels throughout this project. And the reason is that Llama Life uses pixels in their CSS. And I based this whole project off of it. So we're going to be using pixels where they've used pixels, which creates the great product that they have. It's not going to be an exact copy, but it's going to be pretty darn close and pretty impressive for the amount of code we have to write. So now we have this section. We need to start working on a section at the top here that runs this section here. This is what we're going to be working on next. And this is another cool feature of Mantine. So first we're going to set a group here, and this group is going to have a position of apart. And apart obviously stretches it across the screen. We're also just going to set a custom style here and set the width to 100%. Now we have that. Inside of our group, we're going to use action icons. Action icons are essentially just buttons that are presented in a way that makes them look like icons. This saves you from having to use a button and styling it in a specific way. You can just use action icons. So with action icon, all you have to do is state action icon, state the color if you prefer, state the size, so we'll say extra large here, add some margin, and then you give it a variant. So the variant depends on what you want. There's things like transparent, there's filled, there's the default. In this example, we're going to be using transparent because it is a transparent one that we want. Then inside of the action icon is where you use an icon. So we can just import settings here, which is one of our many icons that we imported at the top from tabular icons. Hit save, and then we should get an icon over here. Then we can copy this. and drop it down because we want matching icons, but just a different one. And we can say playlist, add. Hit save. And now we have our two icons very similar to here. Next, we want to work on the next section, which of course is going to be this group little section here, the time and then the task that we want. So outside of this group here where we have a part, we're going to create another group here, and this group is going to have no spacing. So by default, it does have spacing. If you use the keyword none, it will have 0 spacing. Now we can add some margin at the top, and using small, again, I'll repeat this, is they have defaults in the theme that are actually words versus numbers. So small, it's extra small, small, medium, large, and extra large that are the defaults, and they coincide with specific sizing. Then we want a position of center. We want mx equals auto for the centering of the items. We need direction of column. And again, I'm going to set a height here in pixels, and that's going to be 175 pixels exactly. Then inside of that, we're going to add a title. Now, the way titles work are slightly different in Mantine. So a title, instead of just being like H1 or heading as H1 or some variant of that, in Mantine, it's just title, and then order becomes what you want it to be. So order 1 through 6, depending if you want an H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, or H6. So for this, we want an H1. So we'll say order 1. We'll give it a style here. And inside our style, we'll set the font weight. And we'll just say, I don't know, 900, make it extra thick, boy. And then a font size, I'm going to set this to 4 rems. And then we're going to take that, and inside of our title, we're going to just set it to 2500 and hit save. And now we have 25 minutes, which kind of looks similar to this. Then underneath that title, we need some text to tell us what we're working on. So we can do text. We can set the text size to whatever we want, but I'm going to keep it all default, and I'm going to say record Mantine tutorial, because that's what I'm working on. So there we have it. So now we have this top section done, looking fairly similar in nature. The next group is going to have 3 different icons here. We've got this 5, this play button, and then this other 5. So we're going to use action icons, and what's great about action icons is you don't technically need to use an icon. You could just type in -5 and it will show up just the same. So outside of this group here, we'll create one more group, and this group will have a margin at the top of small to push it away from our titles there. And let's make sure we're displaying the right one. And then we're going to set the position equal to center, mx to auto. We're going to have direction of row this time versus column. So direction is row. That is the default, but I like to be very specific. Height equals 200 pixels and margin at the bottom of medium. Then inside of here, we're going to create action icons just as we did before, except from we're going to have 2 that are transparent and 1 that is filled. So we can do an action icon here. We're going to set the color equal to dark, which is essentially black. We're going to set the size equal to extra large, and then we're going to set the variant equal to transparent. Is that how you spell transparent? Looks like it to me. All right, then we're going to do -5 and hit save. And now you can see that here. What we're going to do is we're going to copy these so that we have 3 on the page like this. Then the middle one is actually going to be a variant of filled. And we're going to change this to an actual icon, which will be player play. And if we hit save now, that doesn't quite look right. So let's add a radius here. So say radius equals extra large. And that looks a bit better. That looks kind of what we're looking for here. Now we have that. We can change this to a +5 because that's the opposite. +5. And we're good to go. So now we have this, and we have our section 1, 2, and 3 done. So for our next section, we're going to be using UnstyledButton. Now I'm hearing you cry, what is an unstyled button? Well, an unstyled button essentially just wraps whatever you put inside of it as a button. So if you want a completely custom, off the mark, sort of cool looking button that doesn't conform to normal button styles, you can use this. So for example, here, this add task doesn't really quite conform to a normal button. It has a dashed outside border, it has a plus and an add task, and those things kind of be difficult to style properly. So this is where unstyled button comes in the clutch. So what we're going to do here is create you've guessed it, another group here. And we're going to do this with a small margin at the top and a margin at the bottom of small as well. Inside of that, we're going to have the position to centered, mx equals auto, direction equals column, and finally height equal to 90 pixels. Now we have our group. If I hit save, nothing's changed yet on our screen, but now we can start using unstyled buttons. So the way unstyled button works is essentially you tell it whatever you want. In this example, we're going to be telling it the height and the width of what we want, and inside of it, it's going to be another group. So you can do unstyled button, and then we'll give it a style by passing in the style prop, saying height 100%, and then the width will be 260 pixels. Now we can use this unstyled button. If we hit save, and we put a comma here, what you'll see is nothing yet, but let's add our group, which will have some very custom styles to it. So inside of here, we can do group, and then we want spacing equal to none again. We'll have padding equal to large to make it kind of fat boy. We'll add a direction equal to column. Margin at the top is small. MX equals auto. Position will be in the center. And then we need style here. And the style is actually going to take in a background as well as the border in an RGB setting. So we can do style here, and we can say background, and then RGB 238, 238, 238. And we close that one out. And bearing in mind, I'm using RGB because that's exactly what they are using at Llama Life, and I'm not just randomly picking these colors. Then again, for border, we can do the same. 1 pixel that's been dashed. And then we'll set the RGB equal to 189, 189, 189. And then we'll be good to go here. And if we hit save, we get this nice little box here, which is beginning to look a lot like Llama Life's. Now we have that, all we need to do now is set in a plus symbol and then some text. Here is where I'm going to use box. Now, box is essentially just a random unstyled div that has some properties that you can modify. So we're going to set box here. We're going to hit it as a size of medium. So a medium-sized box with a radius of extra small. And then inside that box, we're going to have a plus. So just say plus. And then we'll style this to a color. So style equals color gray. And if we hit save and we make sure these are in double quotes, we get a nice gray plus sign. Then underneath that box, we can add the text that comes along with it. So we can say variant equals light. Size equals extra small, color equals gray, and then we say add task. Hit save, and now we have the add task button similar to this one. Now, the reason I'm using variant light here is it gives it a lighter effect, and you just need to tell it the color that you want. So if we did blue in here, it would be a light blue color, or black, which is that color, or white, and it will just change it based upon that. So change it back to gray, and now it's a light gray color. So we're almost at the end of this tutorial. We've learned about groups and unstyled buttons, and we just need to do the final section down here, which is these little buttons, and we can do those underneath our final group here. So we can say group mx equals auto, and then I've added some styles here. I want the width to be a maximum of 260 pixels. I want to justify the content to space between, so space between. And we need to change this to be proper for JSX. And now inside of here is where we can do whatever we want. And I also want this to be position equal to right. And you can see how easy it is to add just regular styles that you would want inside of this to make it work exactly how you want, versus having to either use defaults that they've decided and try and tweak it, or some sort of token to also make it work. So now we can do text size equals extra small, and we'll say hide complete, and we can copy this 3 times, hit save. This is what we want, and we want this one to be clear complete, so clear, and this one to be clear all. We can hit save, and then we just need our little emojis that come along with it. So let's throw our emojis here, put a space, and then this emoji for clear. And finally, the broomstick for clear all. So there you have it. Creating Llama Life, or as we called it, our Packer activity using Mantine's UI components. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to drop it a like, comment on more things you want to see. If you want to see more Mantine tutorials, please let me know, as I'm willing to build more things using hooks, notifications, rich text editor, whatever you want, we can build it with Mantine. And until next time, see ya.